Up, everyone? Welcome in another new edition of Celtics Beat. Adam Kaufman, Evan Valenti, of course, and Sean Deveney, good friend of the program, hopping in with us. How are you, buddy?
Good. You're almost at 400 episodes. I mean, I can't believe they kept you around.
Man.
What the heck?
Well, I mean, in fairness, I think I started at like 250. So it was a big built-in number before I even arrived. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be too much longer before they realize they could do better elsewhere. Probably just hand it over.
No. Here's to 400 more.
Yeah, there we go. So look, I'd love to start on a high note, guys. I really would, but it is Thursday, as we mentioned. We are on the heels of, as we record this thing, 12 hours or however ago removed from this, what was really, it was a bad Celtics loss in Sacramento. For as much as that was a good win against Golden State the night before, which it really was. And I get, it's really easy to look at it and say, okay, no Kemba Walker, no Marcus Smart, no Payton Pritchard. I'm basically without a point guard and Teague. I mean, I couldn't have been more wrong about what this guy was going to give to the team. I was so high on the Jeff Teague edition, and he has just been absolute crap so far to start off this year. And he can't turn things around, by the way, still an MVP vet, but so far terrible. And he was bad again last night. And the team was it was bad. 11-point lead in the third, 5-point fourth, and 5's not a lot. I get it. NBA, game of runs and all stuff, but just bad fouls, silly mistakes, defensive lapses. I guess what impressed me so much about the Golden State win wasn't so much that it was a great win over a great team, because Golden State is fairly mediocre, even though they are led by Steph Curry, but it was the kind of game like the Sacramento game that I sort of have come to expect them to lose. They're on top for a while, and then things kind of unravel and they fall apart, and you look at it and it's a 5-point defeat. But they hung on, they held tough, they were resilient, they fought, they were solid, and then to just the very next night show their old warts, Sean, it was disconcerting.
Yeah, I think if you looked at this road trip heading into it, and you looked at these first two games as a back-to-back to start this thing, I think you probably would have said, these two games, if they can split them and then go in and find a way to beat Phoenix, and then win one of the other two games, you come out 3-2 and you're happy with it. So in that context, it's okay. This is all right. Having said that, they should have won that game. You're right. This was one where they just shot themselves in the foot, where for everything that they were missing, for everything they were lacking, for every excuse you could make, if you just watch that fourth quarter and see the dumb fouls, the and ones that they were giving up, the reach-in fouls, the fouls, that was very, very frustrating. Just a win really that they should have had. And, this is a team obviously that is lacking in depth. I think that showed last night. But you have to wonder over the course of this trip, does this loss set them off? Because, they've got 3 winnable games, I think, but they also have 3 losable games here. So, if this comes back as a 1-4 trip, what a disappointment that would be.
I agree with everything that you just said, with the exception of the lacking in depth part. And that's not to say Boston isn't lacking in depth. I guess where I'm quibbling is, when you're missing 3 guys from your rotation, which they were in Smart and obviously Kemba, and Pritchard has been a fixture in that rotation when he's been healthy, and maybe he returns to this next game against the Clippers. He's obviously getting close. I mean, you take 3 guys out of any team's rotation and you're going to look like a totally different team.
Yeah. I think one thing that stood out to me is that Tremont Waters is not ready for prime time. I think we saw that last night, that, I think a lot of these guys are going to miss the G League, and not just him, but a lot of the guys who were sort of those two-way players who, were doing well by learning and playing a lot in the G League, and then bringing that back to the big club when they needed those minutes. I think there's going to be a lot of guys around the NBA who are feeling that, and maybe, as good as Tremont was in the G League last year, obviously MVP. I mean, he was as good as he got. You can really see that he's lacking. So, when I say a lack of depth, I guess that's what I mean, is that you're winding up turning to a guy who's just not ready. And obviously every team has that, but the Celtics, when you look at their roster and the experience level of a lot of these guys, it's just not there.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do much, wavering over last night's loss to Sacramento. I'm just not gonna do that. When you're lacking three ball handlers, Kemba with the minutes restriction, Smart with his what seems to be a lucky, fluky, not that big of an injury deal. Like considering I thought he snapped his Achilles after that second look at the cap there. For him only be out 2 to 3 weeks is amazing. And no Payton Pritchard. Like I didn't really expect to win the Celtics to win last night. I didn't expect one. When you're lacking that kind of ball handling, and you're making Jayson Tatum be point Jayson, Jeff Teague's getting minutes, like heavy minutes. Tremont Waters is getting heavy minutes. Carson Edwards is getting minutes. It's just your whole offense is out of whack. What I liked, well, I'll tell you what I did like about last night's game is that Jayson and Jaylen were like, look, we're going to do this on our own. There's going to be ways that, you guys got to help us contribute just a little bit here and there, but we're going to take the majority of the shots and we're going to try and get this team to a win. They almost did. I mean, think about it this way. If they don't allow a stupid backdoor, open layup at the buzzer to Halliburton and they count Jaylen Brown's goaltend, there's 4 points right there and there's a win. And you walk out of there thinking, holy cow, the Celtics escaped Sacramento with a win without 3 point guards on their team. So I'm not going to get too upset over it. Again, I like the fact that Jaylen and Jayson seem to be like, look, well, we got to do what we got to do to get this team through the regular season. There's going to be bumps in the road. We're coming off a game in Golden State last night. We're playing on the West Coast. I mean, there's just a lot of things that were in their favor. I'm not going to call it a schedule loss because normally I think they would win that game. But they had no answer for De'Aaron Fox. They had no answer for Halliburton. That's a game normally where Buddy Hield goes crazy. I mean, you saw the stats pregame. Buddy's shooting 39 points per game the last 3 games against the Celtics. So you knew that it was going to be an issue somehow, some way. It's a winnable game, which makes it more frustrating for everybody. But when I sit here and look at it, it's like, look, this team still hasn't been totally healthy yet. We haven't totally seen what this team is yet. But what I am enjoying is the fact that Jayson and Jaylen are continuing to pull this team along, however they need to do it through the regular season. And like every team, if you don't have the depth that you have signed to your roster or traded for, you're not going to go too far in the playoffs. If it's just Jayson and Jaylen by the time we hit the playoffs, yeah, they're going to be in trouble. But I'm not reserving any judgment on anything I'm seeing until I see this team fully healthy for a stretch that's more than 3 games. And last night is included in that particular argument.
Yeah, and just to jump on that, Evan, because well, first of all, I always forget that I got to wear a tie on this show because Evan always, I'm like a Western Massachusetts lumberjack here. But
hey, as a guy that lives in Western Massachusetts, I'm appreciative of that look, man. It's okay.
But the thing about the depth, especially at the point guard spot, though, is that can the Celtics rely on Kemba Walker? To me, that's because look,
I don't think so. As
good as he's been, he's a rookie, and eventually the fact that he's going to be playing 72 games, but whether it's I forget what it is, 15 or 16 games in this month, so he comes back, he's going to be put right into the fire, and he's never played this much. I mean, nobody's really played this much. But especially, the rookies, that's going to be a lot to ask of them. And then you've got Kemba Walker, and is he ever going to be what Kemba Walker is supposed to be? He's shooting 36% from the field right now, 30% from the 3-point line. He is not getting, I was looking at the numbers, he's getting to the rim 15% of his shots. And that is a career low. That's even lower than it was last year. And last year was not good. He usually gets there 24, 25% of the time. So he's not a guy who's getting to the rim. He's not a great shooter. So what is he bringing? And so for the Celtics, that's the big question is Teague has been a disappointment. Can Kemba get back? And then can Payton Pritchard really be somebody that you rely on as a rookie as we get down to the stretch run? This point guard spot, which looked like such a strength not too long ago, is looking a little weak right now.
What do you attribute that to for Kemba? I've been listening to some of his post-game press conferences, media availability lately, and it's not like these go on forever. They're only, 4, 5, 6 minutes sometimes, but he's more or less asked about how do you feel and how you dealing with minutes restrictions and, how much do you love Tatum and Brown and why isn't your shot falling? Because he had the 6 for 18 in 19 minutes the other night. And, Brad sort of defended that and saying you're kind of out of energy when you're tailing Steph Curry the entire game and you're not necessarily going to shoot efficiently. But, to what you're saying about not going to the rim as much as maybe he has historically, do you think with the knee, he's afraid of getting banged around? I mean, I guess as you bring it up, I'm sort of surprised he hasn't been asked about that.
Yeah, and I think some of it might be mental and just being afraid to do it. I think some of it is physical too, that he just can't do it as much as he used to with the knee problem that he's had. They haven't really explained, and this is something that I would like to get kind of the full dossier on this whole thing. What's going on with the knee? What? Because this is something that, think about it. It was a year ago that this started. It was in January of 2020 that the knee thing started with Kemba. And for something to just kind of last that long and then get the stem cell, well, what's wrong? Like, what is the actual injury? I don't think we've got a clear answer on that. And so we don't know. So, you've got this thing with Kemba Walker where, we're constantly wondering about what's going on. Is he fully healthy or all that? But we don't know what he's actually healthy against, what he's trying to get healthy against. Like, what is it that needs to heal? What needs to feel better? This is an injury that he's had for a while, even going back to his days in Charlotte. Is this just some kind of chronic thing? Is there a fix to it? And if it is a chronic thing, then are the Celtics on the hook for the next couple of years here for $35 million a year for a guy who's going to be a 36% shooter?
Who's the right person to ask that question to? I mean, Ainge is not gonna answer it any more honestly than he wants or is able to, and he's not going to obviously invade anyone's medical privacy. Brad would, and this is not even a criticism of Danny, of Brad, of Kemba, of anybody, but you ask these, you're not going to get full transparency on this,
right,
from Danny, certainly from Brad. I feel like Kemba would be probably the most forthcoming if you were to try and ask that question to him. I don't know how much you're going to get out of him either.
Yeah, Kemba's not the chattiest guy. So
right.
I think that's not going to be something he's going to want to talk about. And yeah, I mean, so we're kind of left with this vague knee injury, but we don't really know exactly what it is. There's nobody we can compare it to and say, hey, this guy had something similar. Is it an ACL thing where there's maybe some kind of minor tear or something where it's stretched too far? All these things can happen to a knee and not require a major surgery. I think teams tend to be very honest and upfront when there is a major surgery. Because that hasn't happened with Kemba, we just don't have the answers to that.
Yeah, it is frustrating. And with Kemba, like I said it before, if it's just Jayson and Jaylen and a hodgepodge of other parts, and like I'm not trying to say that Tristan Thompson has been better lately, Daniel Tice has been better lately, and Smart does smart stuff, whatever. But they're not going to compete for an Eastern Conference Finals appearance or a Finals appearance or an NBA title for that matter, if you want to go that far, without him being a huge part of their offense, right? They're not going anywhere. As much fun as watching the Jays are, he is that quote unquote big X factor that they need to get them over the top. Because you look at the rest of the Eastern Conference, right? We talk about this all the time. There's a dynamic duo in place almost everywhere. Brooklyn's got 3 guys that are all stars and all NBA guys. You look at Milwaukee and what they've done between Holiday and Middleton and Giannis. Like those are 3 pretty awesome players. You look at Tobias Harris's resurgence in Philadelphia. They got 3 pretty prominent. Well, I'd say 2.5 pretty prominent scores. Boston seems to be lacking in that department. Kemba gives you at least the ammo you would need to keep up with those teams on an offensive, in an offensive way, and especially when you think about their defense. Like their defense has not been great at all. We've talked about this pretty much every week. I feel like on the show, Adam, their defense has been so bad. They need all the offense they can get just to stay in games. If their defense, John, is going to be this bad. So as look, as I don't freak out about last night's loss because of the way that they've been depleted in that department, I will hop on this bandwagon with you and say, like, we need to figure out what the hell's going on with Kemba Walker, because I mean, if he's not going to play in back-to-backs, I totally understand that they're trying to manage this thing correctly. But to your point, what are they managing exactly? What is the big problem here, to the point where, like, okay, we can't allow Kemba to play in back-to-backs? Why exactly? Why can't he play, 20? Why couldn't he play? Like, only it would be 15 minutes of Kemba Walker last night. It would have been a different outcome. They didn't need a lot of Kemba Walker last night. Just need a little bit of it. Just give him a little bit of a spark. Because, again, when your point guard rotation is Jeff Teague, Trey Waters, Carson Edwards, and Jayson Tatum mostly, you're not gonna win a lot of basketball games. So
right. On top of that too, if he can't play, back-to-backs, why can't he play 35 minutes in a given game?
Right, exactly. So to Sean's point, even though I'm a little more optimistic about the game last night, we still have to get back to this. Kemba Walker, if he's not going to be 100%, he's not going to. And then what is really going on here? And if it's not going to be something that's going to be solvable, or it's something they're not going to describe it, and they're not going to really tell you, do they have to, we've talked about this, I'm sure people have talked about this as well, but are they going to have to maybe move on from Kemba here, or do they have to get something else on the team to compensate for a gimpy, so to speak, Kemba Walker's? Because if he's not going to be part of the offense like they need him to be, well, they need more offense now because their defense has been absolute garbage, Sean.
And that might be part of the reason why they don't want to be very explicit about what's going on with Kemba, is because if you have to make a trade down the line, in the end, everybody's going to wind up knowing what's wrong with him. Like if you want to trade him, then the other team is going to ask these questions. But certainly you don't want to put it out there as much as you need to. You want to be as quiet about it as possible, because if it does wind up being a trade situation, I can't imagine. I've talked about this with other people around the league that right now you just couldn't get rid of Kemba Walker, even if you were just trading him into a trade exception. Like, nobody wants the guy because of the lack of performance, because of the uncertainty about the knee and the contract. And that's where the Celtics are right now with him. So you're right. They need him to get back to what he was, or something close to it, or else, they're sort of stuck here.
Boy, Ev, there's your headline, huh? Are our interns listening? Nobody wants Kemba Walker. Uh-oh.
Yeah, that's not great. It's not where you want to be. You're second year into this contract here with Kemba Walker. It's not where you want to be, especially because the money that's attached to him. Look, we all love Kemba. It's not like saying we don't love Kemba. I love, he's just a great teammate. It's hard to find like a bad story to say about Kemba Walker.
This isn't Kemba Walker the person. This is, at this stage, it's Kemba Walker the player.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe, maybe we're sitting here and we're thinking about this in the wrong fashion. Maybe this is a team that already knows it can't compete with the Brooklyns and Philly right now and all that. And they're just, look, we're going to buy time with Kemba and hope maybe, I don't think they're thinking this, but maybe they are. I don't know. We've got to buy time with Kemba here. This is not really the team that we think is going to compete for a title. We're really just kind of managing our assets until the next off season, where then the next off season, but that feels sort of like, not like a waste, but it sort of feels like a waste. You have a team that's gone to the Eastern Conference Finals, 3 of the past 4 years. Like, you knock on the door for so long, eventually you got to knock it down and get to the next step. And, as much as we want to revel in the fact that this team is, they're exceeding expectations, right? They've, Jayson and Jaylen is only 24 and Jayson's 22. Yeah, but at some point, like, you have to make progress. You have to get over the hump to the next step. Like, coming in second place all the time is great, but what's better? Winning a championship. And eventually you'll be known for your downfalls. And if that's the case here, we're like, oh, maybe we're not really competing. Then what the hell are we doing here? This is what it is. And if to get back to the nobody wants Kemba Walker piece, well, then this team's in a whole lot of trouble because they got a $32 million plus point guard that nobody wants and is functional. It just feels like, again, as we try and stand back and look at things from a bird's eye view here, as much as you want to talk about the progression of some guys, and they're not going anywhere without Kemba Walker, and it really is just a weird place to be right now, considering this is a weird season in general.
Yeah, we're nowhere close to this, but eventually, I need to highlight that the conversation does become, well, Jaylen Brown's only 29 and Jayson Tatum's only 27. Like, what the hell's been going on for the last?
They just entered their prime, Adam. They just entered it.
Yeah,
prime.
I remember when New Orleans signed Anthony Davis to a contract extension, his rookie contract extension, right? So one that was only a few years ago, is like 5 years ago. And I wrote, the minute that they signed him, I wrote a story about they are on the clock now. They've got to win or else he's going to want out. And I heard from so many Pelicans fans who were, what do you think? Just signed the guy. How can you say that? You don't even know. And that's where it got. I mean, that time moves fast. These seasons move fast. And if you don't produce, then you wind up in the situation where the Pelicans were, last year. And that's the reality of this.
Might have to bring our guy Ceylon Perek back, huh? Get Dr. P. See if we can crack some details on this knee injury.
I'm still mad about the fact that we took a lot of flack for that, and you did. I didn't take any flack because I was just the producer on the particular thing. But I watched it all. There's a lot of flack for that podcast on Kyrie Irving, and Dr. P was right pretty much about everything. So
yeah, nailed every little detail. All right, so let's circle back. Just it's relevant to last night's game, but it's more of a big picture thought. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm watching, on League Pass, every team's game every single night to know exactly how all their late game situations are handled. And I'm sure there's a lot of overlap team to team. This isn't purely a Celtics issue, but when we're watching the Celtics every night, it feels like a Celtics issue. And it comes back to coaching, admittedly. When there are just some, going back in the day, like, I didn't love the Paul Pierce isolation stuff. I really didn't. It was too predictable. It wasn't easy to defend per se, because, if Pierce was going to get the best of his guy, as he did so many times, it was going to be successful. But that's not me sitting here advocating for, Jayson Tatum ISO ball. I mean, we saw it earlier this year at one point, and I didn't like it. It wasn't the right move. It was a bad shot. The timing was bad. They just ran down the clock for no reason when they could have set up a play. It doesn't always make sense. But there are times that you would rather see that, or a play drawn up for Brown, or a play drawn up for Kemba even, as opposed to, like, down by 3, Javonte Green is going in for a contested dunk, as he did late in the final minute last night. Or, you got Tatum and Brown and Walker all on the floor, but let's Marcus Smart jack up a 3. And I'm like the leader in the clubhouse when it comes to Marcus Smart can be a good 3-point shooter, defenders club. So it's not even an anti-Smart thing. The late game execution, the late game plays, and not specific to ATOs. We know, the wizardry of the whiteboard, for Brad Stevens in the past, but there are these fleeting moments late in games that feel like they are truly difference making, that they're, now that we're at a point where they're getting a little frustrating.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that the Celtics have done over the years under Brad Stevens has been run the offense. They've always just sort of run the offense, and that's a lot of ball movement, and that's what they should do for 46 minutes. You get to those final 2 minutes, I do think you need to change. I do think you need to say, we got to find a way to get the ball into the hands of our best players and the guys who can win us the game. You mentioned Pierce. If you can get Pierce on the elbow, you do it every single time, and I'll live and die with that shot every time. And you think about that. What's the equivalent of that on the Celtics? What's that go-to sort of play where they're going to live and die with this shot? I don't think they have one. I don't think that's a factor with this team. And you get down to these close situations, and it shouldn't be egalitarian offense at that point. It should be let's get the ball to our 1%. That should be, you should get the ball to the elite players that you have, the guys that you're paying the $30 million bucks. And we mentioned Kemba, and the shot that he took a few nights ago, I forget which
Lakers.
one.
Yeah, Lakers.
Against Lakers, right. I was okay with that. But again, like, I would still rather see somebody else take that shot. I wowould rather see something set up for either Tatum or Brown to take that shot, especially Brown the way he was playing in that game. So I think that's an element where they kind of continue to run the offense in those situations, and they shouldn't.
Yeah, with Tatum too, Tatum's got that step back that he just loves, and he just, we saw it against Milwaukee in the opener over Giannis, and he hit it over Giannis twice in that game, and it was like, one of those days where Tatum's got that shot rolling. It's not my favorite shot in the world. He seems to hit it quite a lot. So, it's not my favorite shot, but it goes in, so I'll live with it, sort of thing. But after a while, it gets repetitive, it gets old, and it's like, all right, well, if that's the only thing you got in the bag at that point, then I think taking a fadeaway 28-footer is not the best use of your skills and your talent. If you take that shot a little bit, closer to the basket, I don't have as big of a problem with it. But to back up what Sean's saying, yeah, the ball's got to find probably Tatum or Brown at the end of the game, find a switch that you like, and have those guys go to work one-on-one. And and with Brown, like, get him in anywhere in the mid-range. He's been unbelievable in the mid-range this year. He's been spectacular at it. With Tatum, if you can get a smaller defender on him and give him the opportunity to get a little closer to the basket, back his guy down, because he's been a great post player this year, Jayson Tatum. Find a way to get him in the post, back down a smaller guy and hit a turnaround or whatever. Like, it's probably going to end up in a better shot than being so far away from the basket. Sometimes I think guys get obsessed with the Sports Center highlight of, like, I just hit a step back three over Giannis, or I hit one over Anthony Davis. Look how cool this is. And so, what else is cooler, though, is wins. And I'd rather have a shot a little closer to the basket. Again, I don't have any problem with Kemba's shot. Kemba's got that killer step back game as well. We all remember the one over McGee in the Big East tournament against Pittsburgh. The one at the top of the key there. He's been kind of made that shot his staple shot of his career. But I prefer to see something a little bit different there. I agree with Sean that at the end of the games, like, the offense needs to stop. You got to get the ball in the hands of your best players. But I do want to bring something up that Dwayne Wade said the other night. I think it was during the halftime of the Golden State game. And he says, look, Jayson Tatum can make any shot. We've all already seen it. He's 22 years old. He can make any shot that he takes on the basketball court. If he's taken it, he's made it 1,000 times if he's made it once. The thing with Tatum that he has to do and be better at is finding a way to make sure his teammates stay engaged and that they can help carry him a little bit as the game gets on. And when he needs to really kick it in, he actually has the energy for it at the end of the game. This is kind of I saw this last night a little bit, because there were times in the Sacramento game where Tatum looked gassed and he was still just shooting way too much. And it was like, again, I appreciate the fact that you're taking responsibility, try to will his team along and try and get him through this game with a win. But at some point you have to trust your teammates, and you have to conserve your energy for the end of games when the games get tight and defense gets a little ratcheted up a little bit, and you need to make a shot one-on-one against somebody. And when you've been shooting and using all your energy throughout the rest of the game, you don't have it at the end. Instead of trying to get by your guy at the end of the game to get to the basket, you're settling for a 28-foot step back. So, finding, again, as long as the ball gets to Tatum or Brown or Kemba at the end of the game, I'm okay with it. How they figure that out, how they navigate the defense is on them. But the one thing with Tatum is he's got to learn that next part of how to conserve energy. So at the end, when you need to be Paul Pierce, you need to isolate Al Harrington and get a bucket, you can without looking like you're exhausted by the time you get there.
Yeah, I think that's he could stand to kind of watch LeBron and the way that he manages a game
So Wade said that exact sentiment on that in the halftime show.
Exactly right. Find your spots and know when now I'm gonna let everybody get involved. I'm going to set up people. I'm going to, be a little bit of a decoy. And now I'm going to assert myself, and sometimes it comes in the second quarter or third quarter, whatever. But you want to have that certainly for the final 6 minutes. You want to kind of set up. It's almost like a pitcher who lets somebody get a single off them on a pitch in the first inning, knowing that in the seventh inning they can go. Pitchers don't go seven innings anymore, but in the sixth inning they can come back and get a strikeout with the pitch that maybe they can fool them to make it look like what they threw in the first inning. That's something that Tatum, thinking the game that way as a whole 48-minute unit rather than just go all the time. I think that is something that, especially if you're going, with the skill that he has, man, he's got elite level skill. You're right. That's like the thing, that mental aspect that can bring him kind of to the next level there and win games.
So with regard to winning games and helping this team out, of course, Danny Ainge, the team's president of basketball operations, did his weekly interview with 98.5 The Sports Hub in Boston earlier this morning. And Sean, you were tweeting a little bit about this, Ainge's comments. He was asked what Boston's biggest need is with the trade exception, that massive TPE that the C's have almost a calendar year to use. So there is no urgency other than the people that would just like to, see them use it now and improve this specific team. But obviously they could use it in the offseason and, put it toward next year's team, so to speak. But he said, shooting with size, says the team's looking for a complete player who can help defensive focus too. Called the trade deadline the sweet spot for likely using the TPE. So obviously that's, not too far away. It's, I'm glad at least, and you acknowledged this on Twitter that should probably squash the JJ Redick rumors that Shams Charania had put out the other day, saying that the Pelicans were looking to maybe trade him to a team in the Northeast, be it the Celtics, the Nets, the Sixers, and I tweeted quite a few times about how it makes no sense. It makes no sense bringing in JJ Redick, an almost 37-year-old JJ Redick, having the worst year of his career, by the way, and using half, if not more than half, based on where the Celtics are in the salary cap right now, on a JJ Redick. Pipe dream, people keep talking about Nick Vucevic and, Aaron Gordon pre-injury and guys like that, like guys who are, have been or still can be, will be, project to be all-stars, mid to late 20s, guys who are just maybe in bad spots and for whatever reason the team wants to unload them because they don't want to pay them down the road. But there are building block guys, which JJ Redick is not. And Danny Ainge, and I don't have to tell Danny anything he doesn't know already, he's smart enough to know that you don't waste the TPE, an historically huge trade player exception, on a guy like JJ Redick to help a team that still doesn't put you over the hump.
No, right. And a guy who you can probably get, I'll tell you exactly where that rumor came from. It came from David Griffin and in the Pelicans front office, because what he wants to do is create a market for JJ Redick that he knows ain't there. There's no market for JJ Redick, with his age, with what he does defensively, with the way he's played this year. He's a buyout candidate, and then everybody knows if you wait till April, you can sign him with a buyout. So that's where that came from. JJ Redick was never really going to be somebody that was going to come with the Celtics. The question becomes, okay, who can? And do you get a short-term fix, a LaMarcus Aldridge, for instance, who, is a free agent after this year, probably not somebody you're going to sign. Maybe if he were to stay on a reasonable deal, you would, but not obviously he's in his mid-30s too, but could help you this year and could be that kind of stretch for that this team has lacked, pretty much since the early 2000s, since Antoine Walker, right? It's a tough question, because you're right, because if a team gets in a position where they say, all right, we want to get rid of this guy and we just kind of want to get rid of him. We don't need anything back. We just want to get rid of him. Whatever it is, whatever the reason is, then the Celtics want to keep that there for that reason. Problem is that's probably not going to happen. So what are you going to do? Are you going to find somebody who can help you this year? Are you going to find somebody who can help you going forward? It's a tough question, because you have to decide when to pull the trigger. And once you pull the trigger, there's no one pulling it. You can't redo it. You only got one shot with this TPE. So it's a tough situation for Danny. I think when you look at the market, when you look at what's out there, they're probably going to. I think in the end, they're going to have to find somebody who can help them this year, and probably not somebody who's going to help them much longer. Harrison Barnes would be to me the ideal fit, just because he would fit well. He does everything that they're looking for. He is overpaid, and you're not getting out of that contract after this year. But if they could make that work, he's probably the best. The best guy you get. But then, of course, you have to sit back and say, all right, basically we traded Gordon Hayward for Harrison Barnes, and that's a loser. That's a loser of a deal. No other way to say it.
Better than getting nothing.
Better than getting nothing.
Yeah,
yep.
But you're going to be a loser regardless of how it goes down, because Gordon's been playing out of his mind this year, and I'd like to apologize to Gordon Hayward and the Charlotte Hornets for calling them a lame franchise basically earlier in the year and thinking that they had no prospects. They've been super fun to watch, and Gordon's been unbelievable. But whoever you get back is just not going to be nearly as good as Gordon is. He's been outrageous this year. And, guys with size, Boston's a small team. You look at, they're playing like, is Jayson Tatum like the new height of Jayson Tatum? Is he the tallest guy they have on the floor at all times? It just seems like it. Tristan Thompson's not really, a super overly tall guy. He doesn't really play. I mean, he plays big to a point, but he's not an explosive athlete. I love Rob Williams to death, and he's starting to kind of figure it out, and his numbers are starting to really trend in a really positive direction. But can he count on that for an entire season? We'll find out. Daniel Tice, as good as he is as a shooter and does all the little things you need, again, he doesn't play super big. So the question is, how big does that guy need to be, and how does he need to be? Do you sacrifice more for defense or more for shooting? Because you're going to have to find. Like, I've always liked Larry Nance as a guy that they could go after to bring in, who's a really superb defender. One of the in terms of steals per game, he's either at the top of the list or very, very close to it this season. He gives them a wing defender, which they could use to give Jayson and Jaylen some time off and Marcus some time off as the primary wing defender. But does he really bring that shooting and scoring aspect he might need? Maybe not. That's where Harrison Barnes comes into play. And Nikola Vucevic, if that's even a realm of possibility, that's where those guys come into play, guys that can really shoot. Vooch is a bigger body, but not necessarily as versatile defensively as Harrison Barnes. Barnes is a better, a switchable defender, but, doesn't give you the size that you possibly. So, it's not going to be that perfect fit that Boston can find to really insert, to really put them, in a different stratosphere of team. They might luck into it with a Harrison Barnes, but there's just not that slam dunk. I mean, the guy that I would have loved is the guy currently kicking ass in Houston. That's Christian Wood. Mm-hmm. But unless you're going to offer some ridiculous bounty for Christian Wood, I don't think Fertitta's going to let that guy go, because he's been just unbelievable on both ends of the floor this year. So, and I'm sure you guys get it way more than I do, but like, what are the Celtics going to do with their TPE? Well, as we get closer to March and closer to that date, we still have no clarity on it, because there are so many teams that are like in the periphery, kind of, hey, maybe we get into that play-in game. Maybe we can sneak in and do this, do that. We have no idea how this is going to go and who's available. And it might just be like a week before, all of a sudden the leaves start falling off and you have a little clearer picture. But right now, you have really no idea who's available and who's not, because kind of everybody, unless you're Detroit or the Wizards, you're kind of hanging around, or the Timberwolves, like you're kind of hanging around. I just don't know where that trade partner is right now, Sean.
Well, here's your weekly reminder, too, that you can't get Bradley Beal. You can't afford him, for all the people that are insistent upon that happening. I will add John Collins to your list that you mentioned before.
I love him.
That's a guy that he's not coming, but that's a guy that I'd love to see here. Before just, letting Sean go to answer your question, how about inserting this? I mean, if it short of acquiring Aaron Gordon, because no one's doing that right now with the injury, his injury might actually help increase the odds of landing a guy like Vooch, because Orlando is going to fall off.
Yeah. And Orlando has been pretty, teams have been calling about Aaron Gordon for 2 years. And they've been pretty staunch in the fact that they weren't going to trade him, even as you had Vucevic doing what he's doing. And it was clear that they were putting a lot into Jonathan Isaac. But Isaac's out for the year, and with Gordon basically, that right now, I mean, look, you've got Isaac's out for the year, Markelle Fultz is out for the year, you've got Gordon's going to miss at least a month and a half. So yeah, if you're the Magic, you've got to start considering where are we going with this? I mean, this is, even at their best, even when all those guys are healthy, they're about, a little bit over 500. That's the kind of team they are. They're a 6 seed and probably losing the first round at their best.
Right.
But where they are now, they've really got to consider, blowing this thing up and starting over. They've got some decent pieces to work with, and that's positive for them. But you're right. This Aaron Gordon injury is kind of forcing them into a corner where they got to decide what they're going to do with this group.
So, in the interest of time, we only have a few more minutes. I want to make sure we get to this. Evan and I are so used to news breaking after our shows. This is a nice change of pace. The Shams Charania, the NBA and the Players Association have agreed to host the All-Star Game March 7th in Atlanta. Sides are finalizing details of a plan as soon as Thursday. Thursday is today, even though the news came out today. So it's possible we will know that much more after the show. But at last reports, anyway, not going to be a whole full weekend thing like in the past because of obviously the pandemic. It would be a game and skills competition happening in the same day. Players could be named all-stars and still, opt out, decide not to go, understandably so. But I bring that up in part because I wanted to outline this. De'Aaron Fox said after his monster game against the Celtics last night, I mean, just truer words have not been spoken. De'Aaron Fox was asked about the All-Star Game proposal in Atlanta, and he said, if I'm going to be brutally honest, I think it's stupid. We said this last week with Mark D'Amico, and we just kind of, we grazed over it. We moved on. Now that it is official, I think this is just to quote Tom Cruise in The Firm, I think, or A Few Good Men, one of those. This is a galactically stupid idea on the part of the NBA, which is generally speaking under Adam Silver, especially during the pandemic, been so remarkably responsible with how the league has handled all of this. And now out of the bubble, having so many games postponed or canceled last minute. You had the Denver Detroit situation the other night, contact tracing. Now we're going to take players from all over the country and put them into one city for a night or two to have an all-star game. And yeah, sure, you have to follow protocols and be tested, and everyone has to test negative. Like, I get all that. I get the people that would be out there rebuffing what I'm saying, but this is so unnecessary and dumb. You want to say that guys should be named all-stars, Tatum, Brown, whomever else, and get the bonuses that are in their contract? Like, sure, of course. I'm not anti that. Like, I'm not anti economics, but let's not play a meaningless exhibition to have a showcase to, give everyone a platform for one more night in still the heart of a pandemic when this just doesn't need to be done, Sean.
Yeah, and it's this is about the broadcasters. There's no question that this is all about getting the night of TV in. That's in the contract, so it's something that they don't have to pay back that money. That's what this all comes down to. I think if I were the broadcasters, and I would kind of recognize that probably nobody's going to watch this thing, and the negativity that's going to arise from it, because you're going to have so many players say, no, I'm not going. That it's the cost benefit analysis here has to be not worth it. And that there had to be some other form of broadcasting, something else that you could put there. Be creative, but don't have an all-star game. I mean, it's just they finally got to the point, like, they have no COVID tests. Nobody tested positive this last grouping. That's great, considering where they were a couple of weeks ago. Everything's moving in the right direction. And then you go and, announce this. It just doesn't make sense, for one thing, on a COVID level. It also doesn't make sense on, look, the Lakers and the Heat had 70 days off before they had to start the season again. Like, 70 days. Give them a week off. Give them 4 or 5 days, whatever the length of the break is here. Give them that entire time off. Don't do this. It just, I don't understand what the benefit is. To me, it just, the negative far outweighs the positive here.
No, nothing to add to that. I don't think it's a smart idea. I think if you want to, do something charitable with it, find a way to donate to charity and to be a part of this group that wants to really raise awareness for social changes in this country. Do something with that. There's no need to have a game. I mean, if you want to do something really positive, that feels like a better use of your time. It really does. Because I'm with Sean. If all these guys end up saying no, who the hell is going to watch the game? Nobody. So what's the point? Make it something. Again, the players, would probably appreciate that a lot more anyway. And they're just better things you can do with your time. And it just feels like Sean said, it feels like a money grab, and it just feels wrong. And I don't think they should have it. And I think we should, again, give guys time off. Relax, get your body right. Again, especially for the teams that played late. And it just be thankful the fact that nobody's sick and you're keeping people from getting sick.
But if we're going to have fun with this thing, I mean, not that he would be named, but we all know Kyrie Irving would still go, right? Can't play regular season games for his team, but he'd go to an all-star game.
Javonte Green for dunk contest. You know, like screw it, just put Javonte in there. He's fun to watch in transition at least.
Kyrie will go if there's an Uncle Drew 2 that he needs to promote. Kyrie will be there if he needs to promote his next movie. That's for sure.
I'll see it. Clippers coming up next to continue this road trip. That is tomorrow night, another late game. These West Coast games are brutal. And then in Phoenix, Sunday afternoon, and then wrapping up the trip Tuesday night in Utah against, for inexplicably, the league's best team standings wise, the Utah Jazz. And then it's back home for a game 1 week from today, Thursday, against the Raptors. So we'll regroup probably sometime before then after the road trip and let you know obviously how everything fell. But this was a fun one, fellas, even if last night's result was not. Sean Deveney, Evan Valenti, I'm Adam Kaufman. Sean, thanks so much.
All right, thank you guys.